Okay.
There we go. Okay. Good evening. Thank you all for coming out tonight for our Candidates Forum. This is a really unique opportunity in Tillamook County. We typically do not find ourselves in a position of having a commissioner leave midterm. So in fact, this is the first time it's happened in Tillamook County. So we are writing the playbook as we go. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Erin Scar, and I am one of your Tillamook County Commissioners. I'm this year's chair of the Board of Commissioners, so I'm pleased to welcome you tonight. Because this has not happened in Tillamook County before, and because we are writing the playbook as we go, I'm going to just kind of give you an overview of the process that we chose to use to do the appointment for Commissioner Yamamoto's remainder of his term. We did look to other counties who had been through this before us to get an idea of what had worked in other places so that we could take the best of what had been tried and then put, of course, our own Tillamook spin on it. So we started with an open call for interested folks. We wanted to make sure that anybody in our community that had an interest in being in service in this way could put their name in the process. We received 16 people with interest, 15 of whom were qualified, so that gave us a pretty big list to start with. As commissioners, we met one-on-one with each of those 15 candidates, and then we did a ranking process where all of the commissioners ranked folks, the first top 7 that they had. And from there, anyone that had 2 commissioners say they're in the top 7 is sitting in front of you today. So it started out with those of us that are currently working, having an opportunity to kind of think about what the skills and things were that were needed and to rank that. The 6 that are moving forward with you, the rest of the process is we're all here tonight, and we have a wonderful forum put together by the American Association of University Women, and I will let them tell you a little bit more about their organization before we get started. But this is traditional for Tillamook County, so when I said we put Tillamook County's spin on it, this is one of those pieces. Whenever we have elections, they always do an amazing job of holding a forum and making it available for the community. So that's what's happening tonight. We are using the microphones, one, to help those of you in the room hear us, but secondarily, this is also available online, and it's really important that we use the microphones so that everybody online can hear us. So we'll be asking the candidates to do the same so that everybody can hear. It's also being recorded, so it will be available on the county's website in case you are here tonight, but someone else says to you, oh, I missed that. Send them to the website, and we will have the recording available. So we have this forum tonight. On Monday night, we will have an opportunity where the commissioners will actually do more of an interview format with the 6 candidates as well. That will be at Tillamook Bay Community College, also at 5 o'clock. So there's another opportunity if you want to hear more from the candidates, or again, if you talk to somebody who said, oh, I missed that, you can say, wonderful for you, there's another opportunity. So at the end of that opportunity, so at the end of Monday night, Commissioner Bell and I, who are tasked by statute with making this appointment, will begin our conversations and our deliberations. We may make a decision on Monday night. We may decide that we want to sleep on it and come back to it at our next public meeting, which would be a commissioner meeting. So that's the process as it's laid out for the entire piece. I'm going to let the AAUW folks talk a little bit more about their format tonight and anything they want to tell you about that. We are hopeful through this that you all get a chance to know the people who are willing to serve in the community and get a chance to kind of think about it. And we will take, public comment from you through our regular channels if you want to share something that you heard tonight that you think is an absolute plus that we should have in a commissioner. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Heidi, who's going to talk a little bit about AAUW.
Hi. So I'm Heidi Luquette, and I want to welcome everyone to the Tillamook Bay Community College campus tonight. We were very pleased to have this forum take place on our campus, as well as get to host through American Association of University Women. So I work at the college. I'm the vice president of administration over there, and I'm the current president of AAUW. And we are a nonpartisan, nonprofit association that advocates for gender equity and economic security, mostly for women and girls, but our membership is open to everyone who is interested in the work that we do. 2 of the important things that we have done for decades in our community is offer scholarships for higher education for women and girls, We've broadened that to be beyond that scope at this point, and we also have conducted candidate forums for decades. And it's been a really important way to help our community stay engaged in the voting process, though I understand that's not a voting piece tonight. But just to get to know candidates and be educated citizens and to advocate for our community. So we were very, very proud to be asked to participate in this tonight. And I'd like to introduce Lisa Phipps. She is our long-term public policy chair. She is excellent at this. She's moderated many, many a forum. And I'm just going to support her right up front as the timekeeper. So I'm turning it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Heidi. AAUW is a great organization, and if you have a chance to look us up, you're going to learn that we do a lot in this community and a lot for encouraging our young women in particular to really engage, to support them in the STEAM fields, and to make sure that they feel and understand the value that they bring to this world. And so it's a really great organization. So I'm Lisa Phipps. I'm going to be your moderator this evening. So for those of you online, hello. And for those of you at the panel, hello. Tonight is going to be a little different. If you come to our forums on a regular basis, you may see that we're going to tweak this a little bit. The questions were secured in advance. So a call went out to the public. They offered the opportunity for anyone to submit written comments. Those were compiled, and those are the questions that we have here this evening. We will not be taking questions from the audience as we often do in our other forums. They always have to be written, but we won't be doing that tonight. However, and I'll remind you at the end of this, there are comment cards at the back of the room, the side of the room, that you're going to want to grab a hold of and maybe take some notes, make some comments. This is your opportunity to provide the county commissioners, sitting county commissioners, with the feedback they need to help in their deliberations about who's going to be your next county commissioner. So tonight, gentlemen, we have 12 questions. I think we'll get through all of them in short order. Some questions you'll have 2 minutes, others you'll have 1. I will let you know before each question. We will rotate so no one person gets to be the first or the last. And we do have a timekeeper. So for the 2-minute questions, well, actually for both of them, at the 30-second, no, you know what? Yeah, at the 30-second mark, Heidi will show the yellow card. At the 15-second mark, Heidi will show the red card. Okay?
15 seconds left.
15 seconds left. No. Yes, 15 seconds after you've started, she's going to show you cards. No, this is near the end, and I will cut you off. No, look, everybody's like, I'm sorry. I will gently remind you to wrap up, and then we will move on. For those of you that may have been through this process before, it will feel pretty comfortable. For those of you not used to spewing your whole life out in 2 minutes, it can be a little daunting, but that's why we brought everybody up close, to encourage you, to give you smiles and happy nods and the look of, okay? So that's how we're going to do that this evening. This is supposed to be an opportunity for the audience to learn from you, but you know what else? You're also going to be getting that visual cue feedback, and I want you to be paying attention to it, hearing how people are responding to you, thinking about what you're saying. I think that's going to be helpful for you, whether you're successful in this or you decide to run for another office or this office during the next election. So we're going to get started. We're going to start with Mr. Olson first. Oh, is it okay if I call you by your first name? I didn't write down everybody's last name. Okay. So we're going to start with Doug first. And this is going to be for everybody. This is a 2-minute question. And this is really the opportunity for you to provide your opening statement, why you're here, what you think you're planning for this evening, and what you need these folks to know. You're also going to have 2 minutes at the end to wrap up, so think about that. But I'm sure everybody's prepared for this. So Doug, I'll let you start. Go ahead.
All right, well, thank you, Lisa, and thanks to the University Women. My name is Doug Olson. My wife, Patty, who's right here. We live in Pacific City. We've been there about 30 years, a little over 30 years. We've owned a business almost the entire time. I'm a native Oregonian. I was born in Hood River, not much different than Tillamook in a lot of ways. I'm pretty independent. My parents died when I was quite young, and my grandparents raised me until I was a freshman in high school, and then I was with 3 separate families, and left high school, graduated, went on to college, worked my way through college, ended up with a degree in business administration and some graduate work. After graduation, I worked for a couple of national companies, the old Montgomery Ward and also May Company. They sent me to Chicago. I had a really, really good job buying hardware for the whole nation for the company, but I absolutely hated the Midwest. So I came back here, and I ended up at Evergreen Schools as a contracting officer. That's in Vancouver. And it turns out that I really, really found I liked public service because the mindset was different, the people were different, the goals were different, just the way things happened. So I took an interest in that. I was there for 7 or 8 years, pretty active in some regional associations. And then I took a similar job at Washington County over in Hillsborough, our neighboring county to the east. Similar job, contracting officer and also facility manager. So I was there for a while and ended up down in Pacific City where we bought a business, and I've had a long career in public service here since I've been in Tillman County. So with that, I could talk about more, but I've been elected 7 times to public office, the chair of the budget committee, and maybe more as we move along. Thank you.
That was great, Doug. I will remind for the rest of you, there are a lot of questions that may get to some of that, so it's okay if you don't get it all in at one time, okay? It's okay.
Thank you.
Stop the timer.
Doug may have broken this.
It's an effective strategy.
Not that.
It wasn't me.
And all those fields change back.
Can everybody hear me? My name is Ken Henson. I have been an Oregon, South Tillman County resident for 20 years and have been in private industry for 20 years, owned businesses. I'm currently the owner of a consulting company, work on leadership, development, restaurant, lodging, consulting. I grew up in Ohio. Go Buckeyes. I grew up in a small town, and I couldn't wait to get out of a small town. Went to college at the University of Maryland, where immediately was over my head as a 17-year-old going to the big city from a town the size of Tillamook. Knew that I needed discipline in my life. I dropped out of college, went into the military. One of the best things I ever did. Instilled a real sense of discipline and camaraderie and team building. Got out of the military and decided to go to culinary school in Columbus, Ohio. From there, I lived a little bit of all over the United States. Came to Oregon for the first time in 1994 and just fell in love with the state of Oregon, the people of Oregon, the geography of Oregon. Traveled a little bit, came back to Oregon because my wife and I decided we wanted to raise our family on the Oregon coast. We thought we'd be the luckiest people alive if we could somehow manage to make a living on the Oregon coast. 20 years later, here we are, proud father of 2, proud parent of 4 pets, and have always believed very, very holy in servant leadership. I think my time in private sector could be coming to a close, and would like the opportunity to bring my experience, my expertise to Tillman County.
Thank you. My name is Jerry Keene. Thank you, Lisa and Heidi, for putting this together. Thank you to everybody that cared enough to show up tonight. Appreciate it. Speaking to empty chairs would have been a little more uncomfortable. I'm a native Oregonian. My husband Rob and I built a vacation home in Oceanside over 30 years ago, and then moved here full time when we retired 14 years ago. I was an attorney. My practice involved lots of work at the state legislature and state agencies. I argued hundreds of cases before the Oregon Court of Appeals and Supreme Court. lots of involvement in administrative law and those kinds of procedures and concepts. Relating to the Board of Commissioners position, I think the experience that's most relevant is the issues and the people and the interactions I learned about as spending 5 years as president of the Oceanside Neighborhood Association, our community association. From that vantage point, I worked with the county commissioners and public works and community development and all the agencies, basically as a consumer, coming to them for help, coming to them for money, coming to them for advice. And those related to things like land use and zoning, roads, short-term rentals, emergency preparation, neighborhood communications. Those are all things that I cut my teeth on as a leader in our community. Beyond the ONA, beyond the Oceanside Neighborhood Association, I've been involved in the County Short-Term Rental Committee since the advisory committee since 2017. I'm the current treasurer and elected member of NOSD, which is our sewer district, our sanitary district. I'm the president of our community 501c3 foundation, and I'm the editor and publisher of the Oceansider, which is a newsletter some of you may read that goes out once a week in the Pioneer. Other than that, I'm really interested to hear what you'd like to hear about, and I'm looking forward to your questions, and thanks again for coming.
Hi, I'm Paul Fournier. I am a 28-year resident in Tillamook County. I moved here from Boston. Don't hold that against me. Through that, in the beginning, I started working many different jobs. I was a produce delivery guy. I volunteered for the Oceanside Fire Department, which became Netorts Oceanside. From there, I got training at TVCC doing EMT. Became the EMT for the fire department. Volunteered for them for 8 years. I worked as an assistant instructor for the EMT program. Then I went to worked for the hospital for 3 years as an ambulance. Prior to that, I worked for the Headlight Herald for 3 years as an editor. I've been kind of serving the community in a bunch of different roles, most of it public safety. I retired in 2018. I worked 18 years for the Tillamook County Sheriff's Office, working various duties for them. I have a small business. I have lived in the same house in Netarts for about 27 years. I own a piece of property in Netarts. I'm very concerned with how this county is going to go into the future. And I am running for Tillamook County Commissioner in the 2024 election. So vote for Paul. Not this one, although he isn't one for me. I've known Paul for 25 years. I was really mad at him. Anyway, but yes, I feel like this position, both as an interim and hopefully as an elected official, is just a way of me continuing service to this beautiful county that I love.
My name is Paul Levesque. I'm a resident of Netarts, and I've lived in Tillamook for 51 years. I'm married. Many of you may know my wife, Gail, who works at the Tillamook School District office. Between us, we have 5 daughters. My daughter, Sarah, is in the back of the room. And we have 13 grandchildren. So I worked for the county for 42 years in increasingly responsible duties, such positions as emergency manager, the county property manager, contract officer, management analyst, and chief of staff at the time of my retirement. I've sat on a number of intergovernmental boards, including Tide and Tillamook Lightweight, where I served as president until my retirement. I've held a number of positions on statewide boards, committees, and public associations, including the Oregon Public Property Managers Association. I currently volunteer on the Oregon Geographic Names Board, and we advise the United States Board on Geographic Names on petitions to change the names or rename or name a geographic feature. I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Is this too late to know that I'm colorblind? Just kidding. All right, let me know.
Oops, now I started because I thought you were starting. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Good afternoon. I would like to begin by expressing my appreciation to the commissioners for hosting this forum and to all the people whose efforts contributed to making it possible. Thank you. If you're here tonight, or this afternoon, or reading this transcript, then you share a common interest with the rest of us present here tonight, which is a concern for our community. I'm not a native to Oregon coast, but in the 12 years I've lived here, I've developed a deep passion and appreciation for it. There's no doubt in my mind that my kids are better people as a result of growing up here. And that reason alone is enough to instill in me a strong desire to protect and preserve our way of life. I view our community not only as a resident, but as a member of a family business in Pacific City. I also serve on the board of directors of the Friends of Pacific State Run Airport. In short, I'm vested in our community. Much of my professional experience has by design or necessity imparted skills to me that I believe will allow me to serve my community well as a board commissioner. But most notable would be my experience that I've gained serving as president for LMCH. LMCH is a microcosm for larger communities, with all the challenges thereof, including over 6,000 differing opinions regarding how LMCH should be governed. This has been a tremendous learning experience for me, laying the groundwork to prepare me for serving my community in Tillamook County. I would like to thank everyone in attendance tonight for your willingness to take the time to ask us questions and to express your concerns as they relate to the future of Tillamook County. I want to assure you that if appointed, I will make it my mission to understand your concerns and to address them to the best of my ability. Thank you.
Thank you.
So this next question is 1 minute, the timekeeper. If appointed to the position of commissioner, what do you see as Tillamook County's top 3 issues now and into the future? And we will start with you, Ken.
I think our number one concern should be how we take care of our county financially. We don't have the money that we used to have, 20, 30 years ago. Timber revenues drying up. We have a rich history of culture of timber and dairy farming here that we need to continue to take care of. So I think taking care of our county financially is our number one concern. I think housing security is our second biggest concern, and food security is our biggest concern. 27.5% of single mothers report food insecurity in this county. 57% of school children in Tillamook County report food insecurity. So some big challenges we need to overcome.
Thank you. I think the number one issue for anybody that's paying attention is going to be what County Treasurer Sean Blanchard tried to warn us of in her budget message this year, which is a combination of declining timber revenues from the state harvests and our emphasis on short-term priorities in our budgeting historically are going to collide and cause a budget crisis here. And we need to find a way out of that budget crisis depending on timber and tourism, because neither of them are enough and they're going to get smaller. The timber is going to get smaller. So that needs to be long-term focus, has to be on reconciling those issues. I think the other 2 issues are housing, workforce housing, which Director Absher has been absolutely amazing, pulling a rabbit out of her hat and finding the funding and pulling together a group to focus on subsidizing short-term housing. It's amazing, and we need to continue that. And then finally, emergency prep. We are in a world of hurt. And our county, the city of Tillamook, has no emergency preparations. The county has very little organized. And so that would be my 3rd main priority, although there's so much else to work on.
Okay, I could go on for a long time, but I'll pick 3. Obviously, workforce housing is higher in priority. We have jobs available here. We have very little housing available for workers to come here and be here and work. Every department within the county is dealing with this every private industry is dealing with this. We have to make this a priority. We have to do more for middle-class workforce housing. Second of all is something I wasn't aware of, but was brought to my attention at the fair, was affordable and available childcare. Every major employer, the top 5 employers, are working on this, and we need to make that a priority so that there is available and affordable childcare for everybody. And the third, of course, being a public safety guy, we need to continue and expand our investment into public safety. The activities that happened last week were a good example that we could really use some more investment into public safety.
My first priority would be the affordable housing for all people in Tillamook County, from the unhoused population on up to the semi-professionals and professionals that are needed so much in this county because there aren't qualified workers and yet they can't find housing. The second would be the biological opinion and implementation of FEMA's plan for dealing with flood issues. I don't think people appreciate the extent of that issue. And thirdly would be the Habitat Conservation Plan and the fact that it's going to remove 62% of the lands in Tillamook County out of production. Those would be my 3 issues. Thank you.
Okay. My first and primary concern, of course, would be the projected budgetary shortfall. As a result of COVID, about 40% of the workforce is not returning to the traditional office. That's a huge paradigm shift in the American workforce. And I'm hoping that we can find ways to tap that workforce and draw new revenue sources into Tillamook County. Needs that these people haven't even identified yet, because this is such a new thing on the market. The second, of course, would be housing, and my last would be a lot of federal and state mandates that are coming down that potentially could negatively impact Tillamook and other counties.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I would go back, as you've heard from others, on the shortfall in the county's general fund. I've been the chair of the county's budget committee for a long time, probably close to 20 years. And the budget of the general fund is around 30 million, but 10 million of that is basically working cash. So 20 million is in part what comes from our forests and other sources, including property tax. If we lose a third of that, it's very significant, upwards of as much as $3 or $4 or $5 million that goes into discretionary spending. So that's one, probably number one. Number two, as was also mentioned, is the buyout, the FEMA floodplain expansion that would preclude building or rebuilding in our county, and that's a big deal to a lot of our farmers. And then finally, housing as part of infrastructure, including our roads and internet services.
Thank you. This is a yes or no question. So, yes or no? You have 4 minutes. Yes or no question. As you are aware, this position appointment is for a duration of 12 to 13 months, depending on when you start. Do you plan to seek election to this position in 2024?
I've made it clear that I view this position as an incredible service opportunity, but it is not, this position is that, but it is not an ambition. I've been retired, my husband and I have been retired for 14 years, and that would, running again, becoming a professional, would take a great reworking of our life plan. I offer my services because I really care about the county, because I feel like I've had experiences at a local level that others have not, that can help bring a perspective to the commissioners, also based on my legal background, all of my work with county staff and their operations. I felt like I could step in and hit the ground running and be an effective commissioner immediately while doing that work and not being distracted or keeping my eye forward to get reelected, just focus on the job. And so that's why I offered my service.
Thank you. Mr. Paul?
Yes. I'll be running. Vote for Paul.
No, I will not be running. I have offered to help based on my experience and knowledge of county government if the board should decide that's what they wish to do.
It's my intention to run, but my experience on boards, it usually takes about a year for a board member or director to get up to speed, and without knowing who's appointed, at that, I would hate to see the process start over again. So I would say my decision would be based upon what I truly believe was best for the community at the time.
No, I do not plan to run. I've been elected to public office 7 times in this county, 4 terms on the committee, and I think 3 terms on the Water and Sanitary Authority, and it's probably time for others to step up. I also believe that the voters should have a say in who our next commissioner is. So I do not plan to run, but I can tell you I will hit the ground running because I know most of the issues and I've been around a long time. So, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I would run, but only if appointed. I believe that having potentially two vacancies, I believe Commissioner Starr hopefully will run for re-election. But her term is up, I believe, at the end of this term. And quite honestly, it scares me to have 2 vacant positions, potentially 2 vacant positions. And I believe that Tillamook County needs cohesion and continuity in these positions. And so, yes, I would run. But I would say, as I said in Tillamook Pioneer, that if the citizens of Tillamook County, I believe that they, like Doug said, should have a say. If they would not vote for me, that they would make those wishes known to the county commission during this process.
Okay, the next question is also 1 minute. If running a campaign, which individuals or entity, let me start that over, excuse me. If running a campaign, which individuals or entities would endorse you? It's a little subjective. You are first, Paul F. 1 minute.
I don't know who would endorse me. I think being a county employee might get me some of those folks. I think I might be the only BOCC candidate, well, definitely sitting here. I don't know if there's ever been a county employee, rank and file type of person that's been elected to the board. So I think I bring a perspective. Perhaps the unions in the county. I am an 18-year Teamster. 3 of the 5 top employers in this county are union shops, so possibly them. And hopefully everybody in this room after seeing how good I'm doing. Okay.
Having never run for political office, I don't know that I have any organizations that would support me for an appointment. I guess my hope would be that the 3 county commissioners would do so. Thank you.
Well, I guess that's really what it's all about. Once you're running is to go out and get those organizations to endorse you, to work for that. And that would be the challenge and part of what I would enjoy doing. But I do have to say, as I shared with Commissioner Yamamoto, that my parents are in the back, and if I don't comport myself well, I'm going to be grounded.
Well, it's hard to say because one never knows. I will say the reason that I'm here tonight, and I had originally planned not to do this, I got a lengthy call from Representative Gallagher, our state representative. I've also talked at length with Commissioner, former Senator, I should say, Betsy Johnson. I think she would endorse me. Mark Labhart, former commissioner, has been after me for years to run, and I told him I really wasn't looking for a full-time job. And I think at least 1 or 2 of the members on our committee board would endorse me. So, but that's a part of the question, so take it for what it's worth. Thank you.
I need to call Betsy and Mark. I would hope that I would be endorsed by the veterans. I spent considerable time as a school board member for the Stucco Valley School District, and I hope that educators would endorse me. But other than that, I don't know. It's a good question.
Well, in the 80s and 90s, I ran 4 very hard-fought, highly funded, contested cases for the state legislature. And one of the things that really appealed to me in this situation was that by saying I'm not going to run for re-election, I don't have to run the campaign within the campaign looking for support by interest groups or financial support. So let me just say that I'm glad I don't have to, but if you make us do this, I think the group that I could probably count on most, because I did ask them before I decided to run, was that for the last 7 years, every month, just about every month, I have been in a meeting with the other presidents of the unincorporated communities of Tillamook, the ones that work with the county, and we've shared our challenges, and we've shared our insights, and we've shared advice. And I did contact them before I decided to do this, saying, hey, am I out of my head? Am I out of my league? You know, what do you guys think about this? And every single one of them contacted me and said they would support me if I did this and would be glad that I did. So I guess I would have the support of the local unincorporated communities, and I'd be very proud of that.
You can answer these questions as you see fit. I won't make you do anything except adhere to the time. Nobody said the whole world, which I was kind of impressed by, so that's good. All right, our next question is 2 minutes. Kind of a process question. If you had a citizen come into the office with a complaint involving a certain department and or individual, and that never happens, how would you respond to the citizen, and what would your next steps be? And Paul L, we'll start with you.
Thank you. Interestingly, when I was chief of staff, whenever a person would come into the office to talk to a commissioner and they had a problem they needed to work through, they'd send them down the hall to say, see Paul. So I spent a lot of time resolving issues like that. So I have that experience, as I'm sure Rachel probably does as well. So that's my answer.
Thank you. My experience has been, first is to hear them out, but working with other board members, I've found that taking something to them without having it in writing from that individual, it carries less weight. And so I've had much more success addressing concerns of citizens by having them put it in writing for me and being able to move it forward to the appropriate people and departments.
Well, having been in public office for some time, I've had quite a number of complaints come and also a number of questions, not really complaints. The first thing I would do is listen. And if that means going out to lunch or having a cup of coffee, that's what you do. Then you take notes. And then you be sure that it is accurate. And then you take it inside and find out the rest of the story, as Paul Harvey used to say years ago. And then you get back to these people. You never, ever leave them hanging. They may not like what you tell them, but they need to hear from you. So that's what I would do. I would gather the facts and I would go to the appropriate department and people and say, what's the backstory? Is this person right or wrong? And if so, what do we do about it? Get back to that person, give them a full and complete answer, which might include having them talk to a department director or someone like that.
You know, I do a lot of conflict resolution in my consulting business, part of leadership development. And I think first and foremost, just listen, active listening, paying attention, taking notes so that you make sure that you have the facts right. Having a frank and honest conversation. When you need, get if it's a complaint, a serious complaint, ask them to put it in writing. Investigate the other side of the story, like Paul Harvey used to say. And like Doug said, always follow up and follow through. They may not like what you have to say, but you're right, they need to hear it.
I've been on the board of the Utah Social Science Sanitary District, and I've had fielded a few complaints about staff. I also, for about 5 miserable years, was in charge of HR, of human resources, at the law firm that I was a partner with in Portland, and I could not wait to give that up. It's the most difficult job there is. You can't win, and both sides are right. And so what you do is first of all, you do listen. I can't believe how many times just listening, being the place that someone can vent, actually takes away most of the problem. They just wanted to complain, they wanted to know somebody would be watching things in the future, and there's no need to follow up. If there was a need to follow up, then I absolutely would get my facts straight. I would absolutely find out the context. I would also find out the procedural context, because if you're in county government, you're going to be dealing with folks that are members of unions or their management. What are the protocols? What are the procedures? What are the legal protections people have when you start talking about their performance? Make you absolutely sure that I was following the right procedure, precedent, get advice from the other commissioners about it, and then if I needed to, then ask how do you implement action on this? I think it's worthy of it, and then follow the guides that are there. There are guides. I would not wing it. It's a dangerous area to wing it. It's a dangerous area to add to it. I would look for the right procedures and then follow them.
Being in law enforcement for 18 years, I've really never heard anybody complain. So, but seriously, the thing is, to echo their sentiments, is you have to listen to people. People need to be heard. They need to feel like they've been heard. So you have to have the patience to listen to them. And to go further than that, we have a lot of great people working in our departments in this county, so always take the complaint with a grain of salt, get the facts, write them down, investigate. Don't assume that it's actually exactly as that person's saying. I would investigate, write it down, and then I would hopefully give the employee the benefit of the doubt to explain their side of the story and get both sides, rather than just do a bunch of behind-the-scenes stuff and then do a gotcha moment on the employee. I think department heads, whether they're elected or not, are professionals, and I think that they should be treated as such. And I think nobody likes to feel like something's been done behind their back. So I think as professionals, we deal with this all the time as police officers. You get called to the table all the time. I have a sergeant sitting over there. I have a sheriff sitting back there. We get complaints. We get called to the table. But they also give us an opportunity to tell our side of it. I think that's very important. So listen to the person complaining. Don't assume that it's not accurate, but also don't do a bunch of stuff behind the scenes that makes someone feel bad, like that you didn't trust them, I guess. Yeah.
Thank you. This next question, I modified just a little bit. What do you think the duties of a county commissioner? Oh, I'm sorry. 1 minute. Yeah, thank you. What do you think the duties of a county commissioner are? And we will start with Matt.
In its simplest state, it's to represent the will of the people and blend that with governing them and balancing the budget and trying to make all that work. It's not easy to finance a government and also please over 27,000 constituents. And it's really about compromising, which there's been a lot of that with some significant issues lately.
Well, the duties in Tillamook County are different than in some counties. For example, Tillamook County is a statutory county, which means you have 3 commissioners and several elected officials, unlike a home rule county in Clatsop County, Washington County, and a few others, where you typically employ a county administrator, like they're changing now in the city of Portland, for better or for worse. Here in Tillamook County, you are both the chief executive officer of the county, meaning you're in charge of virtually everything, and you're also a policy person, so you're doing 2 jobs.
I didn't have time to finish my notes. Balancing the budget, overseeing the county's departments, representing the constituency of Tillamook County, and I forgot the last thing because I was...
That's enough.
Yeah, that is enough. It's a lot.
Well, first of all, county commissioners are unlike other politicians. You have to actually fill potholes. You have to look people in the eye and solve problems. It's why this would be such a fulfilling job compared to what passes for politics in other places. As I understand it, the County commissioners serve two roles. One is legislative, one is quasi-judicial. Legislative means you know your county, you know the issues, you get input, and you provide policy guidance to the staff that are actually on the ground and implementing policies for the county. Quasi-judicial means that in some situations you have to be a judge. You have land use disputes. So county commissioners, when there's a decision on the ground on zoning issues, gets appealed to the planning commission, then it gets appealed to the county commissioners on its way to LUBA and the appellate courts. So you've got to know that aspect of it. They take completely different skills, different kinds of knowledge about what the scope of your authority is, and you need to really do your homework on both sides in order to do the job well.
Rather than echo a lot of things that have already been said, I would say that the primary duty is to listen to your constituents. In this case, I think having it be a nonpartisan position is a really unique and special way of solving problems. I think the main duty is getting people to come to the table when dealing with issues, and we have a lot of them that we're dealing with, bringing people to the table, but the magic is actually keeping them at the table and being able to talk to both sides if there's two sides or if there's three sides. And I think that departments look to the county commissioners to be able to do that. So I think bringing people to the table and keeping them there and listening to the public.
In addition to what everyone has said, I think overarching is citizen involvement first and foremost throughout the process. And at the end of the day, if policy doesn't work or legislation doesn't work, come back to the table and re-engage citizens once again.
All right, this next question is 2 minutes, and I'm going to break it up into 2 parts, okay? So the first part is, as a commissioner, you are just one of 3 decision makers. How do you see yourself working in this type of environment? So that's the first part of this question. And then the second part of this question is taking that idea and then saying, eventually you may be on the short end of a vote amongst your amongst your fellow commissioners, and how do you deal with that? So we will start now with Doug.
Well, first of all, if you're one of 3, you can only go forward if 2 of you agree. And if all 3 of you agreed on everything all the time, you really don't need the other 2. I guess you could look at it that way. There will be differences, and there should be differences. And the reason there should be differences is because you're 3 separate human beings, 3 separate backgrounds, not necessarily 3 separate constituencies, but your outlook on the world, your own personal history is different. So aside from agreeing on the time of day, you're going to disagree. You make your best case, and if you're outvoted, then you go on to the next issue. If you're in the minority all the time, you learn to live with it, or you adjust it, or you find out how to make a stronger argument. So that should happen, and as I said, if everybody agreed on everything all the time, you really wouldn't need 3 commissioners. So I would favor a commission that did not agree on everything, that somebody expressed a minority opinion, or another way forward, or another set of options, because that's how public policy should be made. What are the options, what are the pros and cons, and where do you go from there?
Thank you. I think for the first part of the question, really relying on the subject matter experts to help inform my opinion or our opinion. Relying on people who are smarter than I am. In private sector, private industry, that's what you have to do if you're going to be an effective leader, is you have to surround yourself with people who know a whole lot more than you do and allow them to inform your decision making. You know, I agree with Doug. Diversity of thought, diversity of idea is what makes for a really strong community. If we all agreed, like Doug said, we only need 1 person making those decisions, but you know, it's healthy. Disagreement is healthy in relationships, in government, in private sector. Ask my wife, she'll tell you.
Well, I think, first of all, you've got to bear in mind you're working in a team environment. That's why there's 3 of you. You've got to, well, this will be the hardest part of the job for me if I get it. I love brainstorming. I love bouncing ideas off of people. I think that's how you solve problems, is you get creative in an atmosphere that's safe. When you're a county commissioner, it's illegal to do that with your other county commissioners. Under the open meeting laws, you have to do it in front of a spotlight. And so I would need to adapt my love of even hearing dumb ideas, you know, and then working from those to good ideas, or getting dumb ideas and working to good ideas. That would be a challenge for me, but it's also a challenge that I would embrace, because I have worked with the other 2 commissioners on many, many issues. I am a known quantity of the county commissioners. They have to decide whether that's good or bad, but they know what they're getting if they appoint me. I'm pretty transparent that way, and I hope they would see it as a positive, and that's the way I would approach it. If I'm outvoted on something, I was a lawyer, litigation lawyer for 30 years. I've argued thousands of cases in front of administrative agencies, and if you look my name up in the Oregon appellate courts, you'll see that I've appeared in over 200 cases where I was a lawyer for one party or the other, the Supreme Court, the Court of Appeals. Do you think I won them all? I wish, but no. So I know my way back from losing an argument. I know that maintaining credibility and trust and looking forward to the next dispute is more important than winning or losing one. 2 out of 3 is a pretty good number. Relax into it, maintain your credibility for the next argument and the next fight, and move on and trust the process.
It's really hard coming in after all this because you don't want to repeat a lot of it. Mary Faith and Aaron and I have talked about one of the difficult part of the job is not being able to just sit down in a room and brainstorm, and as me and Josh would call it, spitballing, where you can be safe and you can say crazy things and you can do that. That is going to be a very difficult part of this job. And I think there are ways to do that in public meetings as well, trying to create that kind of environment where you can share ideas in a way and have that transparency with the public. There's nothing wrong with having them listening, because they might even have some better ideas to offer during that time. So I think that's great. I also think diversity of opinion and thought, as Doug and others have said, is very important. I think, again, having the nonpartisan commissioners, some people don't like it, I think it's fantastic because everybody can have a little bit different slant and bring something else to the table. As far as being outvoted, I've been to court, probably not as much as he has because I wrote really good reports, but I have lost it a couple times. And, you know, I tell people this, I'm from Boston, I love a good debate, Mary Faith can tell you this, I love my friends can tell you that, but I also don't mind being wrong. I like to learn out of curiosity, and so I think the debating for me is just convince me of your argument, and if it's right, and we go that way. So.
I think the first step in deliberations for the board is to come to the meeting fully prepared, fully understanding the issue, and then having the time to fully deliberate the issue with the other commissioners. It enables an intelligent and informed discussion and should result in a good outcome. As far as disagreeing, I would expect that. Not everyone thinks the same way. You can look at an issue and see it differently because we're all different people. I remember what a lawyer I once worked for told me. He's a federal judge. He said you can disagree without being disagreeable. And, you know, so important discussions will take place, and you leave the meeting to come back another day and deal with the next issue.
As far as being a part of a board of 1 of 3, for me, it's a matter of different skill sets. Everybody brings different skill sets to the table, and that manifests itself even in the meetings. And in the board that I'm in now, there's 7 sets of skill sets, but we've learned to rely upon each other and build on those strengths and prop each other up where we are weak. And it is definitely not an issue for me. When I'm casting my vote, it's not a personal thing, it's not an ego thing. It's me voting my conscience and representing the people in the way that I feel that they want to be represented. So It's not an issue for me if I lose a vote. I'm just trying to be in there for my people.
On this next question, we're gonna split the difference. I feel like the question's asking for a list, but you may want to expound a little bit. So we're gonna go a minute and a half. We'll start with Ken. Describe your experience in community leadership positions.
You know, I think I probably have the least amount of experience here in public service, but I have considerable experience in leading teams, in building teams. You know, I'm on numerous state and local boards and committees where I'm charged with helping people see and helping create vision for either a department or for an industry. And I relish those opportunities to help build strong communities and help build strong teams, give people opportunity that didn't exist before we got together.
Well, I provided a list in my opening statement. I won't repeat that. Let me just emphasize a few of the things that I've done that I think relate well to the job of County Commissioner and the background to do it. As the president of the Oceanside Neighborhood Association, I've led the group through 2 community-wide rewrites of our community plan, which involves not only building consensus and some technical work, but also then successfully taking that plan, having it approved by the Planning Commission after hearings, and then by the county commissioners after hearings. You have to learn a little bit about collaboration, about process, and about our, God love them, land use laws in order to do that. So that's one piece of background from my experience. 2, in many ways, when I've worked on local issues in Oceanside, it turns into working on countywide issues. The best example of that is in 2017, Oceanside started the very first local short-term rental committee because we saw issues on the horizon, and we had half of it short-term rental owners, half of it residents, and they put together a list of ideas for the county. They took to the first short-term rental committee, and they were enacted unanimously. And that turned into my being appointed to represent Central County in the short-term rental advisory committee. So that's another piece of substantive experience, I think, from my background. And finally, I would just say I'm the treasurer of the New Tarts Oceanside Sanitary District. I've been through 2 annual budget cycles, had to learn the budget laws, the limits, how to read a spreadsheet, and that's, I guess, a third important piece of experience I have to prepare me for this position.
In my earlier life, when I was in television, I would be a director, and I would direct television and lead people that way. And in my personal life, I race cars in Mexico and motorcycles, and I assemble a team, doctors, mechanics. But probably my most thorough experience as a leader is in public safety. And although some folks may think that's not the same as business, the difference is as a captain in the fire department, I'm training and leading people, and they have to trust me into very dangerous situations. Into a burning building, as part of the water rescue team, I had to lead them, give them the confidence to be able to go out there in the surf and save somebody's life and perform CPR on that person if they're not breathing. I've done that as a police officer, as a field training officer, helping officers, leading them to make good decisions on calls. It's different than business, but I would say that in a lot of cases the consequences are more severe, and with that comes a lot of specialized leadership training. So.
I've been on very many different kinds of boards. For example, boards where I was appointed to represent the county or 13 Western Oregon counties with the Department of Forestry. Very contentious meetings where members of the environmental community, industry were there, and every meeting was very contentious. I've been on meetings with the Fire Defense Board regarding ambulance service areas where there were EMS folks there, and again, very contentious issues, and you take the time to just work through those issues. I've been on boards like the Oregon Public Property Managers Association. We're there for learning. networking and finding out how other counties do the things that you have to do. So I've been on intergovernmental agency boards, like Tillamook Lightwave, where you really have to listen to the other members and develop administrative procedures and administer the buildings and fiber optic network.
Okay, so I currently serve as president, have for 5 years of a 501c7. It's essentially a small city with 37 miles of road, electric, water, its own waste management. And during COVID, unfortunately, for 10 months I became the city manager while we were looking to hire a new one. We're pretty much rebuilding policy and everything for this over 52-year-old community. I'm working with the state, with local agencies, and I work with 12 advisory committees on a regular basis. And essentially, again, I'm working both as management. It has land issues, just like the county here, and it's quite a challenge. It was underfinanced. We changed policy to allow us to redo our investment. During my term, I increased the capital reserve from just $200,000 to over $5 million in 5 years. So I'm pretty good at making things happen in that regard.
Okay, over the past 30 years or so, we've been in Tillamook County. As I mentioned earlier, I've been on the Water and Sanitary Authority, I think 3 terms in Pacific City. I'm in my 4th term on Tillamook PUD. I'm the current president of the statewide association of PUDs. I'm also the president of Tillamook Lightwave and represent PUD on that. Paul Levesque was one of the founders of that 24 years ago. I'm also the chair of the Tillamook County Budget Committee and the Tillamook County Compensation Committee. The Compensation Committee sets the salaries for elected officials and then finally approved, of course, by the Commission. I'm very familiar with public finance, including budgets, types of funding, rating agencies, ethics, Oregon's tax system, and more. I've been pretty active in our chamber down in Pacific City for quite a number of years. I served with several others on a committee to get a road bond, which passed and generated $15 million. I also was part of 3 people that brought the Transit Lodging Committee before the voters and also passed. I also currently serve on the board of the Adventist Hospital. Although I know nothing about medicine, I do know how to read a financial statement. And I've also appeared in the halls of Congress and the Oregon legislature representing public agencies here in Tillamook counties. I also managed the construction of the Cedar Creek Child Care Center when I was hired by Paul Levesque to finish the job, and also the Hebo Fire Station.
This next question is 2 minutes, and it's loaded. Describe your experience with budgeting, including Oregon budget law, and personnel or department program management. Department/program management. And we will start with Jerry.
I already mentioned my experience with public budgeting, the Utah Oceanside Sanitary District. As part of that, to keep our insurance rates down, I've had to take an awful number of seminars on that subject. Our administrator made us. I'm not an accountant, so I'm not an expert in numbers. I can read a balance sheet. I know what policy is reflected in it. I organized the effort to try to incorporate Oceanside as part of the legal requirements for that. We had to come up with a 3-year budget and prove to the commissioners that our approach was feasible. So I soaked a lot up in my skin from that about finances. I have not managed a government body unit besides being the treasurer of the NOSD. I was the office manager, personnel manager for my law firm. It was a 50-lawyer law firm, so there was a lot of accounting, a lot of budgeting, a lot of turning priorities into numbers, making hard decisions, and so that's my background on that. Other than that, just what they teach you in law school, so I probably don't want to be applying to this. So, thank you.
You know what, I was a little concerned about that. I want to make sure that the last part didn't, so if everyone else feels like they should get a couple seconds, I appreciate that. But your experience with budgeting, and then with personnel or department/program management. So also personnel, program management. Okay. Do you feel like you answered that question?
I think I did. My law firm experience,
Okay.
team building, priorities and budgeting, I think that you get a flavor of what I would bring to the table.
I probably have less budgeting experience as he does, except for what I have to do for my own private business, my own small business. Luckily, we have a very capable treasurer, and I understand how to read budgets. I've been doing it during the last budget cycle, and understanding how money can be moved around in county government. I've been watching a lot of that. As far as managing programs, again, I'm not a politician. I don't sit on a lot of boards, so I would say that my experience is more of a layman, and would go back to fire service, where I was in charge of a water rescue program and procuring vehicles, jet skis, equipment, training, personnel, making sure they have state certified training, sponsorship for equipment, and promoting that kind of thing with the community. So I would say the budgeting is probably my least strong point, but you know, that's what happens when you work in public safety and so on.
I have quite a bit of budget experience for the county. I was responsible for several departments as well as a number of individual funds, which I had to prepare budgets for each year. With Tillamook Lightwave, there were 3 board members. 2 of the others were elected officials and didn't work full-time, but as chief of staff, I did. So I became budget officer for Tillamook Lightwave and prepared that budget each year and assembled the budget committee and conducted the hearings. As far as program personnel management, I, as I say, manage a number of departments, programs. One example would be the ambulance service area regulation. I was the quality assurance coordinator for Tillamook County and managed that program for many, many years. Actually developed the ordinance and implemented the program as well.
As far as budgeting, we have a treasurer and also a CPA and other bookkeepers that help with that, but I do have, so as far as preparing it, I don't, but I have to be very involved in projecting it. Currently, we're trying to figure out how we're going to raise money to put in a loss system and a new electric and for 37 miles and corresponding water. So believe me, budgeting is very much on my mind. With personnel, I'm only really allowed to work with the exempt personnel, but I also have to understand the labor force that we have. We also have a union. I realized that we were kind of lacking in that, so the board agreed with me. We went out and outsourced our HR department, knowing part of it is recognizing what you have skills in and what you need to go out and get. And so we rely on our outsourced HR to help us when we really don't know which way to do or what to turn. So I think that pretty much answers the questions. Thank you.
All right, budgeting, as I mentioned, I've been the chair of the Tillamook County Budget Committee for quite some time, and I understand that. I know the difference between fund accounting and enterprise accounting. For example, most of Tillamook County is fund accounting. Lightwave, for example, is enterprise accounting, much like a business. I've also served on the PUD, or helped build the PUD budget. I also serve on the college budget committee and a number of others. With respect to personnel management, that's a bit different. I've hired probably over 300 people, both in my own business and others. I've been deposed in personnel matters. At one time when I worked at Washington County, there was an individual who needed to be discharged. He threatened us. And I might have spent the next year with the deputy sheriff next to me at every meeting, so I've been down the hard road as well as the easy ones. I understand the implications of civil service. I know how that works. I'm also quite familiar with unions, the grievance process, and all of that. And in owning my own business, I probably hired over 300 people, and as Ken would tell you, in the hospitality business, turnover is pretty high. But you get used to that, and you look for quality people, and you do what you have to do. So I've had a lot of experience with budgeting and with personnel matters, and the county fortunately employs some really, really good people in the HR department. And I've also spent way more time than I would like, no offense to this gentleman, with attorneys. But that's part of the job.
I've spent more.
So I sit on the committee for the Solid Waste Advisory Committee as the chairperson, so oversee the implementation of that budget. Again, by surrounding myself with really great people who know more than I do about the implementation of that budget. Had the honor to be on the Solid Waste Budget Committee this year. I also serve as the chair of the Oregon Hospitality Foundation, participate in the writing, that's a 501c3, a state level 501c3, and participate in the writing of that budget and oversee the implementation of the execution of that budget. In private sector, most recently, single-handedly wrote the budget for 6 facilities, generating $20 million in revenues, and have overseen, had, again, most recently, 14 direct reports overseeing the performance management of over 300 employees. And I've hired and unfortunately disciplined at times thousands of employees in my career.
This next question is 2 minutes. We'll start with Paul L. Given the county's challenging, I call you Paul, I call you Paul, I call you Paul L, I call you Paul F. I mean, you've got an issue here, Pauls. Okay, Paul F. Thank you. I tried to diffuse the situation because this is a tough question. Given the county's challenging financial position, what steps would you take to create financial stability in the immediate term and then the long term?
Okay, that's a great question. So one of the things I believe is the county, we've been hearing a lot of the doom and gloom, and I'm so confused on exactly where all that stands, because I know the timber revenues so far this quarter are above expected or predicted, and according to ODF, the timber revenues are going to be pretty much sustained for the next 15 to 20 years. So I am kind of confused. I've been doing a lot of question asking and trying to figure that out. We definitely need our timber revenues, but we also have got to be more aggressive in getting alternative revenue streams going in this county. I've been here for almost 28 years. I've worked for the county for over 20, and I've been gone through this. We're facing a cliff every 3 years, and we've never faced a cliff, but we continue operating the same way. And one of the things I'm running for is to start offering some new creative revenue streams to try to bring more money in. There's $200 million that goes through this county every year. And it's not about changing the TLT. It's about other creative ways of capturing some of that money before it leaves this county. It affects this county with our roads. It affects our county with our fire departments and ambulance service. And I feel like we have to figure out a different model than the one we've been following for 30 years. Yes, timber and timber and farming are our identity, and we need to protect that, but we can't keep relying on that. We have to be more aggressive and creative in finding alternative revenue streams.
I think there's both a micro approach and a macro. As far as micro goes, I think we need to look at each revenue stream and begin to think creatively with each one what we can do to supplement or create side streams into that revenue fund. As far as the macro goes, I think it's time to perhaps look at strategic budgeting, where you first create a vision for the county, and then around that vision, you have some strategic goals about how you're going to fund. Obviously, there's a certain base amount that has to be for mandated services, but beyond that, you need to set priorities, and you do that through a strategic planning process.
Not to echo what's been said, but I guess it's kind of basic planning. I would sit down and look at the current revenue streams that we have and identify those that are predicted to diminish and those that are potential for increasing. And then building upon that, going back to trying to find out a way to leverage that 40% of the American workforce that is changing the way they work and the way they spend their money. Because it's these paradigm shifts where usually the most opportunity exists for generating new industries and sources of revenue. And that's where I would start to try to look.
Okay, the county certainly has some financial issues, and I'll start by explaining the special funds are roughly $100 million, and that would include our Parks Department, the Health Department, and a variety of other things. They have a particular dedicated source of funding, and I would say as a general rule, they're in reasonably good shape. The general fund, on the other hand, is the one that would suffer from the reduction in forest revenues and so on. So it is time, and I've argued this for some time as a member of the Budget Committee, we possibly need to look at other sources. For example, the library system here is funded by a special levy, and it rolls over every 5 years. The voters have an option to approve it or not, and they have for, I think, 20-some years. Perhaps the cops, the sheriffs, I'll look at the sheriff back there, maybe that could be taken out of the general fund, which is probably the largest segment, and funded by a 5-year serial levy, maybe a 7-year. But there are a lot of constraints given at the state level. For example, many of you remember measures 5, 47, and 50 back in the early 90s, late 80s, and 90s that changed how property taxes can be collected in certain limits. And that's part of mainly the major part of the issue. For example, and there's a lot of education that needs to happen in our community. For example, most people don't know that property taxes cannot be used to repair roads in the state of Oregon. So the property taxes go elsewhere. Lots of things like that. There's also the transit lodging tax, which is generating now about $8 million a year, and it's at a level of about 10%. Maybe that could go to 11 or 11.5 and generate some additional money, but then again, there are restrictions on how that can be spent. So it's a dilemma, but it's solvable. But by and large, when they're all done, the budget is what says this is the value system of Tillamook County, and that's the order in which the money will come in and be spent. So it's a policy decision.
Well, I agree that we need to do what we can do to protect the timber revenues and look at alternative revenue streams. But I think we need everybody at this table and even more people in a strategic planning session about what are we going to do for the future of Tillamook County. I don't think any one of us has the answer, but I believe collectively, when we get the best and brightest, everybody who's concerned about the future of Tillamook County, thinking creatively about how we can raise revenues to look to a future that we can all be proud of, where we have a fully funded sheriff's department, where we have fully funded departments, and we have general fund excesses. I think that's a possibility. We just need to bring the right people to the table and talk strategically about how we overcome this problem.
On both the short and long-term budget issues, I would start by going to Doug and say, Doug, make me smart. What do you think we should do? You've got more experience in these issues, more insight, more depth of understanding and institutional memory than anybody, including the current commissioners. And so I would start by saying, I don't have all the answers, but I bet you've got somebody who's trying to get on the table for a while. So I would start there. Short term, I have heard talk of a surcharge on the TLT tax, possibly devoted to code enforcement, which has been a long-held need. I've heard talk about the possibility of bond levies. I think that we saw just the glimmer of a spark of the future this year when during the budget dispute, one of our agencies thought that they weren't being respected in the budget process, called on the public to back them up, and that played out in the budget hearings in a way that I don't think we should let happen again. That was not the way those problems should be solved. And so I would have approached that more differently, and I would have started by going to the agency heads and saying, what ideas do you have? You've been through these budget crises a lot. Are there things you felt like you've been wanting to try for a long time, and the commissioners have been so in crisis mode? But tell us what you've got. You guys know your budgets better. You've been here for a long, long time. And I would, again, say, make me smart. On the long term, as I understand it, the commissioners have already retained PSU for a strategic plan workshop for, I think, a 5-year workshop. And so the folks that are saying that needs to be done, I believe that's underway, and I would embrace that and look forward to participating in it. Possibly my participation will be compromised by the fact that I said I'm not going to be here long term, but also maybe being short term would be an advantage. I would have some political considerations or long-term considerations that might be a little more blunt or open-minded or creative in that process. And so I think that is a really good first step. Finally, as has been said, as I said before, we have got to break the timber versus trees conundrum. And read my statement in the Pioneer that they asked us to fill out, because I've laid out what I think is a third way to build some long-term funding using our resources in the county.
Thank you. Okay, this is our last question before closing comments, all right? So Paul Levesque, we'll start with you. And this is 1 minute. If you are appointed commissioner, do you have any one particular issue or any one particular agenda that you would like to pursue?
Well, I have actually more than one. Certainly implementing the Tillamook Lightwave connectivity to the premises, serving first the unserved areas and then the underserved areas following. The buyout is a very troublesome issue, and I think that needs some immediate attention. There are some opportunities going on with the environmental impact statement, and I look forward to working with Sarah Amsher in community development to help work through that.
My experience on the board has taught me that no matter, and I've seen this over and over again with board members that come in, no matter what we think we know on one side, when you get behind the curtain, as my fellow board members say, you find out how things really work. And it's always a real eye-opener for everyone. So while I have things that I personally feel are important, I would go in with the attitude of what needs to be fixed. In other words, once I get on the other side, what is the agenda of the commissioners, and what's important and what needs to be addressed first. So let the community drive that.
I would not come into this position with a specific agenda saying I want to do 1, 2, 3, or ABC. I think the current commissioners would tell you that you never know what's around the corner, and I'm thinking back to when we came to work one day a few years ago and found out the computer system had been hacked by foreign interests. You never know when that stuff's going to happen, so you have to be nimble, you have to be able to think on your feet. As a general rule, I would agree with Paul Levesque as the current president of Tillamook Lightwave. We need to extend our internet services throughout the county. Long term, we need to get a handle on the money. when it's not stable, and it's not as stable as it should be or could be, we have to fix that. Otherwise, you can't engage in long-term planning. And, you know, when you run an organization, it's really fairly simple. If you have adequate funding, stable funding, good people, you get to go home at 5 o'clock. If you don't, you don't. It's really about that simple.
I would say that I wouldn't have an agenda. I think the agenda needs to be informed by what's happening in the moment, what's happening in the day, and what the greatest need at any given time for the citizens of Tillamook County are. I do agree that I have a soft spot in my heart for food security. I threw out some statistics a little bit earlier. We're in a failed experiment of how we feed our citizens in this country, and I think we need to do something about that. Thank you.
Well, first of all, I've admitted that I only intend to be in this for a year, so I'm not going to be going with any great long-term agenda items, except perhaps possibly help build a foundation if one of those ideas works. I think I will be pulled towards some things that I have lots of experience with, maybe more specialized experience with in terms of short-term rental issues, legislative outreach. I can talk about that more in my closing statement. If I had a wish that I could, something creative that I could just go out and explore and brainstorm, it would be the idea of going out to the business community, using contacts I have in Salem, using existing resources, and finding out what would it take to bring you to Tillamook. We've started the workforce housing issue, but a lot of that housing isn't really, that's housing for relatively low income kinds of enterprises in the state. It's service entities and things like that. We need to bring some businesses to Tillamook County. We've got buildable land. We've got land use laws that are reasonable. We've got resources and a good school system. I don't know that anybody's out recruiting businesses to come here and help fund their own workforce housing and use our new internet system to their advantage. And I would work on ways to try to get creative on that in terms of trying to build that third way of funding that I talked about earlier.
As far as coming in as an interim, I think they've already got things going. I think I would try to figure out how I could help slide into that position. Obviously, I'm very concerned with the buyout, the FEMA buyout, and where we're at with that, and also the housing issues. So I would like to take part in some of that also. Perhaps being on the board as an interim coming into negotiation and bargaining season might give the board a little bit of perspective from the workers' point of view on maybe how to make that go smoother, so it's not a contentious period of time. But basically, I think, again, coming in with an agenda for this position, for an interim position, is a bit arrogant, so I think just coming in and figuring out how we could assist and keep the machine moving smoothly.
Okay, we're going to move into our closing statements, and we're going to, you went Paul, correct?
Yes, I will.
Yes, thank you. So we're going to start with Matt. You have 2 minutes, and this is your opportunity to really sell yourself. So let her rip.
Okay, I already mentioned this before, but during my 5 years as president and leader of the community, I've observed again that you just, until you get into the situation, you really don't know what you're facing. But one of the things that has become apparent to me is that it takes about a year for a director to get up to speed, even when they seem to be knowledgeable of the issues. Having knowledge of the issues and still being the one that has to assimilate all that data and make the decisions is very different. I've earned a reputation in my position of kind of doing unprecedented things. Now, I'm from the private sector, government's a little bit different, but we just had an election, and our board agrees that we don't have a viable president to replace me. So I went out and said to our constituents that we need to work together with the voters and find someone to replace me. So I have a reputation of being very frank and upfront about what's needed and acting on it. Some of our candidates have expressed it's not their intention to run in 2024 and to fill in the blank, as it were, to keep it running until the voters, I guess, can make their decision. It's a good strategy to be an intermediary, but again, that's kicking the can down for the training. So I do plan, if I'm appointed, to run and start my training right away. And if appointed, I'm proposing that the skills that have made me successful, an experienced leader in another community, that I can put those to good use for Tillamook. And thank you very much.
Okay, thank you again for the opportunity to do this. As I pointed out before, I'm a native Oregonian. I grew up in Hood River. I've been in Tillamook County over 30 years. And my service on all these boards and commissions, I think has given me a background that I quite literally could come to work on a Monday morning and be pretty effective by the end of the day. I do know the issues. I certainly know the budgets and the numbers. What I would have to learn is what are the internal issues and how are they being dealt with, because that's how you run an organization. A number of other things that I didn't point out. I'm pretty much a fiscal conservative, and this is a nonpartisan position, but I don't like to spend money I don't have, whether it's mine or yours, and I like to hear a good case. I also am very strong on accountability. If we give money to an organization, for whatever reason, good or bad, I want that organization to report out every 90 days or 4 months or some interval where they are accountable back to the source of the money. And that doesn't always happen in government, and I've seen that way too many times. So my experience in Washington County with a large government, my experience with large corporations across America, and my local experience of running a business for 23 years, I've seen quite a bit of different situations. I've hired people, I've been deposed, I've gone through the legal process, all those kinds of things, so I pretty much know what's going on. And finally, I would say one thing. If I were appointed to this position, and there will be an election next year, if someone were elected, or someone is going to be elected, but if that individual had 50+% at the May primary, I would consider stepping aside in June or July or some point, let that person get a running start, because he or she will be your next commissioner. So that may or may not happen, probably won't happen if there's a dozen candidates, but it might, so I'll just leave it with that. Thank you very much.
It's a great idea, man. So I will say once again that I believe that I have the least amount of experience in public service of anyone else up here. And I consider it an honor to be up here with everyone, and I want to thank the county commissioners for putting this on and everyone here who showed up today. I'll say that you won't find anyone who can outwork me or who cares more. Certainly people that can work as hard and care as much as I do, but no one who cares more about Tillamook County and the citizens of Tillamook County and the future of Tillamook County. And no one who will work harder at understanding the issues and problem solving and working for Tillamook County.
Again, I'd like to thank the forum for putting this together and for you to show up and spend so much time here. After hearing the folks this evening, I am humbled and honored to have been selected to be a part of this group. No matter who is selected, I think the county is going to be well served. I'm really feeling a lot calmer having heard the quality that's up here today about what's going to happen. I think that if the commissioners are going to choose me to do this, I think they should do it because they think I can be useful on some specific things that are going to need work this year. One of those is that the commissioners have committed to a round of community meetings to tailor the short-term rental caps that were passed last year based on input from each community. They're going to have a voice in their individual caps. That's a process I can be useful in monitoring or facilitating or understanding because I was on that committee. I helped formulate a lot of those provisions. I know both the content and the intent behind that law, and I think I'm going to be useful there immediately. Secondly, as I've mentioned this in my interviews and I've mentioned here, I do have some pretty good experience at the legislature. I've written laws, I've written rules, I've lobbied things through, I've testified at committee, I've written floor speeches, I've met with legislative leadership on policy. I still have friends who are CEOs of the biggest lobbying groups in Salem. And I think that one of the biggest needs this year is going to be some outreach in Salem for someone to tell the Tillamook story and communicate Tillamook's concerns about things like the timber harvest and the buyout. The state has essentially been away without leave on the buyout opinion. Someone needs to pull them in and make them aware of what's coming because it will affect them. That's a place I can be useful immediately without a lot of prep. Third, I think that I can be immediately useful in communicating local perspective in our decisions. I started a community newsletter about 6 months ago. In the last 6 months, based on the content and it being in the Pioneer, I've grown to circulation of between 500 and 600 active email addresses. Oceanside only has 300 houses, 300 residents. I think that I've got an ear for what matters to people, what they want to hear about communication, how to phrase it, how to prioritize it. And I think communicating a local perspective and adding the perspective of someone that's been a consumer of the Board of Commissioners from that angle. To the extent you think that that would be useful, I'm glad to offer my services. Most of all, as I said, I'm a known quantity. I don't start things and then drop them halfway. Everybody knows if I get intrigued, I dig in and I go all the way. And if I'm appointed to this, that's what would happen with this position too. I would not take it lightly and I would not do a halfway job.
Thank you.
I love Tillamook County. I'm definitely not a polished politician. I moved here in 1995, chose to make it my home, and retired and stayed and started a small business, and then came back to work for the county part-time. I have a strong sense of what I lack in political acumen. I have a strong sense of duty and service to this community. My former boss, the sheriff who hired me, Todd Anderson, had a great saying where he always said, relationships are primary. I've lived my whole life in Tillamook County with that in mind, my whole career. I have positive partnerships in probably every department at the county, throughout this community, in businesses, local businesses, Kimmel's, Rosenberg's. Like I've lived here. I've been among the people. I'm one of them. I consider this my home. I go back east to visit family, but this is my home, and I'm always happy to come back. So whether I'm chosen for the interim or not, I am going to run, and it's not out of conceit. It's out of a true willingness and a desire to continue serving Tillamook County.
First of all, I'd like to thank the Board of Commissioners for hosting this tonight. Thank the Association of University Women for moderating it. And thanks for the people who came out and taking your precious time in the evening to participate. I think I have done a lot of homework to get up to speed on the major issues. I agree with Doug that if I'm chosen, there are some inner workings to get up to speed on once the position is assumed. I am looking forward to the panel discussion to determine further what the board's concerns and interests might be. And again, it's an offer to help if the board should deem that I would be useful in that position, and I would certainly be willing and honored to serve. Thank you.
So I would like to thank the panel for being here this evening. You guys did a great job. Your congeniality with one another was really nice to see. It's a refreshing change from what we've been seeing in the larger scale politics. I'd like you to all realize that this is a job interview. They just gave it in front of 50 people plus people watching them on TV or their computers. They don't even get to see them. This is daunting, and you all handled it very well, and I very much appreciate that, and I'd like you all to give them a round of applause. And thank you all for coming out this evening. Thank you, County Commissioners, for presenting this opportunity and for asking us to participate. And again, one of the great values of this evening for the Commissioners, besides hearing the responses in this kind of less formal setting than what we'll see Monday night, which you're also all invited to at the college, is the opportunity for you to fill out these comment cards and take advantage of that. Write any of your thoughts, concerns, positives. Let's not forget that. Get that in the comment box drop off. And then I understand there's some food in the back, so eat. And thank you all for being here this evening. It's always nice to see people coming out and supporting process. So, Commissioners, would you like to say anything else, or can we wrap up this evening?
I think we can wrap up,
Okay.
and I would like to say thanks so much to you, as Heidi, to the AAUW for hosting and facilitating for us. Thank you very much, and bravo to all of our candidates. Thank you.
Thank you. Good job, guys.